I'm Zach Martin with Robert Miller. He's the leader of the Rock Jazz Aggregation Project Grand Slam, which is terrific. I understand that you're working on some new stuff with your Project Grand Slam, so why don't you just start off by telling us what you're up to?
Thanks so much, Zach. It's a pleasure to be back on the air with you. I think we did this about 1 year ago when we had just released our album called PGS 7.
That's right.
And here we are 1 year later under very different circumstances. And as you mentioned, we've been pretty active. We've been doing a lot of things. Fortunately, I recorded with the band a new album, and we've literally got it in just under the wire, not knowing, of course, that we were going to be facing a pandemic. And the new album, I'm very, very pleased with. It's called East Side Sessions. And we've taken a few of the songs from the album. We have not released the album yet because, this is a strange world that we're all living in, and we wanted to take our time with this one. But we have released several videos of songs from the album. And in fact, we've got a new video coming out this week from the album. So that's the way we've been trying to stay in touch with our fans and our audience through this whole pandemic situation.
Well, you recorded East Side Sessions before we were all under house arrest. And then part of the project, I would assume,
right,
videos and stuff like that, you did from home using the technology that's available. So like everybody else, you've really had to make those adjustments under house arrest. What were some of the adjustments that you had to make and some of the surprising things that you learned along the way?
Well, the big problem for musicians is that there's no live gigs at this point still. So it's not as if you can play live either in a club or a concert hall. You can't even rehearse. So we were trying to figure out, how do we stay engaged with one another? How do we keep the music going? We did have the album recorded, which was, really fortunate for us. And right from the beginning, we said, okay, we're going to put out some videos of songs from the album. But we ran into a technical hitch because people think you can all just be in different places and you could play together live and make a video. And the answer is you can't do that.
No, you know why? Because of latency. You have like a 3-second delay.
Exactly right.
There are ways to do this, but they're really costly. You'd have to get ISDN lines, and you have to actually build a gigantic studio. So when you look at the equipment that we have nowadays, the technology we have nowadays, it's great in one aspect. In other words, everybody can go record. Anybody can have their home studio. In the old days, with the studios like Electric Lady or Power Station, wherever they might be, you had the ability to definitely do a better job feeding different parts. I remember when Undercover of the Night was recorded by the Rolling Stones in Jamaica, certain parts, they used ISDN technology, basically doing things over the phone, and that was late 70s, early 80s, right around the early 80s. Think about that for a second. Some of the older technology would actually work better today than the new technology works in recording.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, we found out the hard way that, like you said, even if everybody is online, even if you're using Wi-Fi, everybody's Wi-Fi or even, the other connections differ by micro amounts.
Oh, yeah.
So we did this little experiment. I put a metronome on at my end, and I was playing it for one of my guys to see whether the metronome would track exactly the same where he is. And it was way off. And it's because of this latency thing. So the end result was that rather than try to play live in different places, what we wound up doing with two things. Number one, we took some of the recorded music and we all kind of lip synced and lip played to it. And frankly, those videos came out great. Okay, nobody could really know whether you're playing live or not. In fact, that's the way most videos are being done during this pandemic. People are kind of lip syncing because that you can queue up. The other thing that we did, and I did this for a new song, actually a re-record of a song that I had put on an album a couple of years ago, I started to record at home in my makeshift arrangement using my iPhone and my iPad. And I was sending the material first to my producer, my engineer in New York City, and then I was sending it to the different guys in the band who would record, however, in their studio or their home, and we would have it all being edited together. And so we were able to do a video that was a live video in this fashion, where one guy recorded, then another person recorded, then another person recorded, etc. And it came out really cool.
That's awesome. We're talking with Robert Miller, Project Grand Slam, and we're discussing some of the technologies that we can utilize in recording. Here's the other thing, too. Live recording is going to be difficult under these circumstances, but what you can do is record your various tracks and then ship them back and forth to one another. I know over the years there have been plenty of albums that have been produced that way. For instance, I'll give you an example. Guitar Zeus by Carmine Appice. He has Brian May on one track, maybe David Gilmour on another, and they're in their studios abroad doing their parts and shipping it back and forth. And now with Dropbox, you could do that. So, this is great because we're having a conversation not only about music, Robert, but we're helping people with their strategy on how to work around and figure things out. There's a lot of limitations, and you just said yourself you were using your iPad and your iPhone. Let me tell you something. I've had to use, just to do a broadcast from my secret location, which is 40 feet beneath the radio station. I'm surrounded by radioactive biscuits and boxed water in the rock and roll bomb shelter. I have a gigantic Mac machine. Us old guys call them machines. The Mac machine, a couple of laptops, and another mini Mac. So mini Mac, Big Mac. Wait a minute. Check this out. A mini Mac, a Big Mac, a MacBook Pro, plus I've got some of the regular PCs, and you can put it all together. And then the other thing I had to worry about is plus and minus mix. Well, if you have engineers around you, you never even think about that stuff. But when you have to do it on your own, like this interview we're doing now, you got to think about plus and minus. So here's a great idea, Robert Miller. If you ever need the answer of any question, there's an expert on everything that can be found by simply looking on YouTube and doing a search. How many topics did you research on YouTube to do your various projects at home while you had other people around you?
Well, you're right. YouTube seems to have an answer for almost everything, which is quite remarkable. Although this latency issue that we started talking about has perplexed musicians everywhere. And so we've had to work around it, like you said. So now what I'm actually doing, I've written while we've been in lockdown, what else can a musician do except write new music? And I've written about 10 new tunes, and I'm trying to record them with my band. With Duzak, we rehearse together in a rehearsal studio setting. We rehearse the heck out of these tunes, and by the time we actually get into a recording studio, we only need one or two takes, and we've got the album, the song done. In fact, every album that we've done in the last, 5 years, we've recorded the albums in a day. Well, okay, just if you remember back in the 60s, the Beatles went in for their first album.
I knew you were going to say that. Meet the Beatles with the Beatles.
They knew the music so well because they had been playing it forever in Hamburg, etc. And they went in and they did the first album in like 10 hours. And I used to marvel at that, but I found we were able to do the same thing. We'd record like 10 tracks. We still have to do a little fixes here and there. Yeah. But basically, we'd get 10 tracks recorded in a day because we were so well rehearsed.
Well, yeah, you're not recording Dark Side of the Moon, for God's sakes. You're doing your live music. And here's the other thing, Robert, when you think about that, time is money, especially back in the early 60s. Studio time was everything. And the Beatles had a taskmaster, George Martin, who was making sure that they showed up for work and did what they had to do. And then you look at the history of great songs, most of the ones that you're familiar with were written between 5, 10, 15 minutes tops.
A lot of things just come right to you. I've had that experience as well. But I was going to say to you, Zach, that now with the pandemic again, we don't have the luxury of going into a rehearsal studio, working things out, figuring exactly how we want the arrangement to be, and then going into the recording studio. So we're actually doing a throwback. where I've written the song. I'll do a kind of a silly little reference track, I call it, of me just kind of playing along, so the guys will get the idea of what it is that I have in mind to them, and then each person on their own does their recording of their instrument. So we're building it up kind of instrument by instrument, track by track, which is the way that and pop music has been done for quite some time, but not the kind of improvisational music that we're used to.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, because you guys got a lot of instruments that interplay, especially when you're recording the East Side Sessions and working with Project Grand Slam. And for those listening, Robert Miller, you're kind of, I would say, and I don't take this the wrong way, you're a late bloomer, right? You started a little bit later in life to do this recording. No, that's, because it's good in that you should never let age or your situation have that much of a control over your life to where you just stay where you are and don't grow anymore.
Well, you're right. I kind of did everything backwards from the way everybody else does it. I refer to myself as the Grandma Moses of music. If you're familiar with Grandma Moses, she was right. a celebrated painter that didn't get started really painting professionally until she was in her late 70s. I'm not quite at that stage yet. But, seriously, when I was in my early 20s, like most people, I reached a crossroads. Do I do music full time and starve, or do I attempt to, find another way to make a living and also play music? And I took the second road, and it's been a long road. I've been playing consistently for the past several decades. But it was only about 5 years ago that I said, okay, this is my time to do music full time, to do exactly what I always wanted to do. And I was fortunate enough to find the right musicians, and I've been writing like crazy, and we've been performing and making albums and playing festivals and concerts, and it's been like a dream come true. So I have no complaints.
And what would your advice be? I kind of guess what the advice would be, but let's say somebody is, during this pandemic, under house arrest, as I call it, and they're wondering what to do with themselves. They're maybe thinking about changing their careers because they've been furloughed or laid off, fired. Maybe they're toying with the idea of getting further education. Maybe they're thinking about just going to deliver groceries, which is a great job, by the way. What's your advice to somebody who's in that point where they're thinking about making some sort of transition?
Well, look, if you're passionate about the arts, whether it's music or any of the other arts, you probably just have to do it. But you have to do it with recognition that, you're choosing a certain life and it's a certain lifestyle. Music is a terrible career. I have to tell you, it's a terrible career.
It's no better than radio.
It's no different. It's no different from a lot of other careers. The top 1 or 0.1% make a lot of money. Those are the people you hear about. Everybody else underneath them, is working and struggling and creating. And, you have to decide for yourself, how do you want to run your life, and what sacrifices do you want to make? It turns out when I was young, quite young, I already had a family. And so I felt I had certain obligations, and I had to satisfy those obligations. Nowadays, it's pretty tough. It really is, because at least back then, people sold record albums. Remember those? And then they sold CDs, where you had 10, 12 songs, and you sold them for $15, $16. And then it went to downloading, where, you sold each song for 99 cents. And now everything is streaming. And streaming is terribly unfair to musicians. It's just unfortunate. Forget the Taylor Swifts at the top of the pyramid. I'm talking about the other 99.9% below them. Just to give you an idea, one of our songs was streamed 45,000 times in a financial quarter about a year ago, and I got a check for $6.86.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't live on that.
And
services
like Spotify, they're making plenty of money Their employees are well paid, but they have a high turnover ratio. So I wonder what's going on with that company. Which brings us to this.
Well, but right now, there's no alternative, unfortunately.
Well,
if you're a musician and you're making music, you're not selling CDs because most people don't even have a CD player.
And you can't do your gigging. You can't do your gigs right now.
You can't do the gigs. The record labels got smart. Once they figured out that they couldn't sell records anymore, they then entered into these 360-degree deals, meaning they took a piece of everything that the musicians got. So whether it was record sales, download sales, gig revenue, merchandise revenue, they took a piece of it, and that just made it even harder on musicians.
Well,
right now, you can't go out, you can't perform live, you can't sell your merchandise. Everybody's in the same spot.
It's a double-edged sword because, for instance, I decided to do my own thing radio-wise and create my own show and my own radio stations, and whether they're online or eventually get on signals, I decided to go on my own because at one point, Robert, I felt, well, if these morons can do it, anybody can. And I saw some of what you see as a musician where here I am, a very talented individual. I got a lot of ideas, but everybody else was making money off of me instead of me making the money. And I thought to myself, I might as well go do it on my own anyway, because if I make money or won't make money, it really is all dependent on what I could do. And then the other side of it is my willingness to work with all of these artists so that they could have these interviews like we're doing with you and have their songs played on an online radio station that's not making any money, obviously, for me. And hopefully it adds exposure to the artist so that when we get back to work, when things turn around, when we are paroled from our house arrest, we'll be able to really take these moments that we've all lived through, digest it, and then maybe we'll start to think, well, something, you're going to come out of this either two ways, depressed or hopeful.
I got an email today. We were scheduled to play at a festival this year in Serbia. We played there a couple of years ago. It's called the Nispil Jazz Festival. It's a terrific festival. We had a wonderful time, and we put out an album of our live performance called Greetings from Serbia a couple of years ago. Anyway, we were scheduled to play in August of this year, and I just assumed that festival was canceled because everything in the United States has been canceled for the summer. And lo and behold, I get an email today from the festival saying that the Serbian government has now approved this festival to be held in August. And I'm saying to myself, well, wait a minute, I got to fly from the U.S. I can't even fly directly to Serbia. I got to fly to Bulgaria and then, transfer, and we got to stay in a hotel, and then we've got to get to the festival site, and are they going to have the same 20,000 fans, or are going to be 183 fans because everybody has to socially distance? I mean, you start going through the what ifs, and I'm really baffled by this whole thing. How are they going to do that?
Well, they have a mysterious way of dealing with issues in Serbia, much like the Russians do. It's called vodka.
You might be right.
I know I'm right. Those are my people. It's part of my heritage. I know exactly what it is. Grandma would make the vodka, by the way. She had a secret recipe and make it various flavors. So the secret to that is going to be the vodka. I'm sure people will show up, but yeah, what's going to look like in another 6 months? I guess that's on everybody's mind. So in the meantime, all you can do is keep creating new music. Doing your videos, exploring opportunities. Here's a good one, Robert. How about somebody somewhere come up with some sort of a solution for this latency issue so that we all could do what we do even better? You would think that someone would have a brain somewhere and figure out some algorithms to compensate for latency. There's got to be a way to digitally do that.
Well, you're right. It would be lovely if the 7 or 8 of us in our band could all be sitting wherever we're talking about. And, we've got folks that are literally all around the country, and one guy's in Western Canada. And it would be lovely if we could all get together and just play live and have it come together, and maybe even record it as we're playing it. But the technical issues are what they are. So we just, as you said, at a time like this, I think you just have to be creative and you have to be clever, and you just have to say to yourself, what is it that makes me happy? And from my point of view, writing and recording and putting out videos and having them strike a chord with people around the world, because that's one of the nice things. You put out a video on YouTube, and that video is around the world before you know it. And that's one of the great things about the time that we're living in. It's not limited geographically. This podcast is, I'm sure, available everywhere in the world.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's no real limits to it. We're going to definitely distribute it, because it's not just about music. It's also about business. It's also about life. It's also about some nuggets of life coaching, if you want to call it that. You've had an amazing career, even though you started late, because I don't know too many people that probably are aware of this, but you opened, I remember you telling me, you opened for, let me just hold on a second, Edgar Winter, Yes, Blues Traveler, right? Am I right about that?
You are correct.
Okay. Who else would you like to play with? And you never know who's listening.
Well, I'm waiting for Eric Clapton to give me a call. I would love to play with a guy like Clapton. I was a major fan of Cream when they were around, and I adore his playing. Guys like Chick Corea, some of the great musicians out there. It would be great if they would participate with us. In fact, one of the songs on the new album, when I write music, I don't try to write in particular style. I try to be as varied as possible. And every once in a while, something will come out that kind of is in the wheelhouse or it sounds or it has the vibe of another artist, which is fine. I'm not ripping them off. I'm in a sense just, kind of making a little connection there. And one of the songs that I wrote on the new album is called Stockbridge Fanfare. And it was written after a little town in Massachusetts that I love called Stockbridge, Massachusetts, the home of Norman Rockwell, for example. And who plays in this area? Who's a big person in this area, big artist in this area? None other than James Taylor. And he's got a house in the area. His wife works at Tanglewood, which is the big music venue in this area. James Taylor plays at Tanglewood every July 4th. Unfortunately, all of Tanglewood is closed for this summer. I mean, that's the result of this pandemic. But when I wrote the song Stockbridge Fanfare, I didn't really have any James Taylor thing in mind, but it came out with a James Taylor kind of vibe. And, one of the things I'm trying to do is get that song to James, and maybe he'll come in and do a little overdub on it. Who knows? Yeah,
you just got to tweet James. Say, hey, man, check out this new video I have, or my new song that I have, or, hey, give me a call. Hey, message me. You could do all of those kind of things. Hey, look, people have plenty of time in their hands. So we're talking with Robert Miller, and he's got this new album that's coming out, East Side Sessions. What are some of the tracks that people will find? And of those songs on East Side Sessions, which ones are made into video, and what kind of reaction did you get?
Sure. Well, the first one that we released as a video was called It Is a Miracle to Me. It's a happy, upbeat, joyous song. And I thought immediately, this was right after the pandemic closed everything down. And I said, you know what? We need kind of a musical antidote to this terrible pandemic. And I felt that song was just that. It was a happy, joyous, antidote musically to the virus. And it really did very, very well. And then the second thing we put out was another song from the album. Of course, all of these songs were written and recorded before the pandemic, but this one also had a message that I thought kind of was appropriate. And that one was called I'm Falling Off of the World. Okay, it was. I wrote it kind of about just the circumstances that we all live in today, where things happen that we're probably not too happy about. And you can name your event when I say something like that. but sure enough, this pandemic came around, and it just made people feel like their world was falling apart. And this video, we put it out about a month or so ago, and it's over 300,000 views at this point on YouTube. Which for a band like ours is really spectacular. So I was very, very happy with that.
That's spectacular.
And then
we've
got this.
That's spectacular.
Then we've got this song coming out this week, which is called "The Podners," not partners, Podners, Pardners. I decided a few months ago when I was writing the music for the new album that I wanted to write a cowboy song, a Western song. It was just something that came to me. And then I said, in the middle of the song, I stuck in this little straight-ahead jazz section. So I said, the world is waiting for the first cowboy jazz song. and that's what this is. It tells a story about two partners, cowboy partners, and they're living a life of crime, and one rats the other one out and steals the booty. And the other one comes back and gets her revenge because it's a female. And it was a fun song to do. And then I went and said to my video guy, I said, I really want, this song tells a story. I said, I want it to be a story video. I don't want to feature the band. We're not going to all play our instruments in this one. I want it to be like a mini movie. And he went out and he found a public domain video of a 1968 spaghetti western called The Belle Starr Story. Belle Starr was like a frontier woman who was also like a crook and a thief and all of that, and she was very celebrated. And they made a movie about her, and it stars this beautiful Italian actress named Elsa Martinelli. I don't know if you remember her. But, she was in the Sophia Loren type of era of Italian movies. And this was, again, done in 1968. And he took the pieces from that movie and he created a video of my song. And it's just fantastic. It's so different. And I'm going to really love to see everybody's reaction to that. This is going to come out this week.
Okay, so how do you find it on YouTube?
Just look up The Partners, Pardners, or just look up Project Grand Slam, and all of our videos will come up on YouTube. We've got our own channel there, of course, and we've got, 30, 40 other videos that we've done over time, some live, some recorded things, but this is going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, Eric Clapton likes to listen to the show, so Eric, what you can do is you have Robert Miller's permission to cover any of his songs and even put your name on it. He won't object to that. Same thing for Ringo Starr, maybe Dave Mason, and the other guys that listen. Rob, you definitely dropped a lot of great names on this interview. See, that's the key to success.
It's always, listen, you mentioned Ringo, so I got to say one more thing. One of the songs that we did on the album, the new album, I like to take a 60s song and redo it completely as a PGS style song. Uh-huh. I've done this over the past number of albums with Hendrix, with Cream, with the Kinks, and this time around I wanted to reach for the Mount Everest of music. So I wanted to take a Beatles song and do the same thing. But I didn't want to take something that everybody knew because you start to get criticized that you're trying to tamper with gold. So I took one of their older songs, in fact, a song that Ringo sings, called "Then I Want to Be Your Man." Cool. Okay, do you remember that song? It was from the Hard Day's Night era.
Yes.
And and also little trivia, the Beatles gave that song initially to a little band called the Rolling Stones, and that was the Rolling Stones' first single. Okay,
there you go. Yeah.
They did "I Want to Be Your Man," and then the Beatles recorded it afterwards for A Hard Day's Night. I took the song, and because we have a female singer who's just fantastic, I rewrote it as "I Want to Be Your Girl." And so that's going to be on the album as well. And I'd love to get that to Ringo because I just think he'd get a kick out of the fact that we took one of his oldest songs and did what we did to it.
Well, I think that, let's see, do I have a connection to, I think I have a connection to Ringo. I got to look at my rock and roll Rolodex, and we'll make sure that Ringo
That would be awesome.
Gets that song. Well, thank you, Robert Miller, for your time. I'm looking forward to hearing the various tracks and checking out the video, which if you go to YouTube and you go to Project Grand Slam, check out Eastside Sessions, and then you'll find that Pardner song, which is a converted spaghetti western. And this is an example of what happens when you're under house arrest and you have too much time on your hands. You're doing two things, scheming, plotting, and figuring a way out of it. So there you go. Are you on social media? How can someone follow you on social media?
Thank you for mentioning that. Obviously, we have a website, projectgrandslamalltogether.com. We're on Facebook at Project Grand Slam. We're on Instagram at Project Grund, Grnd Slam. We couldn't get the word grand. Somehow or other, it was taken or it was too long or something.
So
you on Instagram, we're a little bit different.
Now
you know what?
You'll be big in Munich now.